Hello, Sierra Canyon. Have you ever noticed that the third Monday of January is a day off of school? Have you ever wondered why? Some of you may know it's to celebrate the birthday of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. But I think it's time we talk a little bit more about who he was and why he's so celebrated.
Before we start talking about Martin Luther King Jr., it is important to understand what activism is. Well, in activism, there's active. So does that mean getting in my 10,000 steps every day?
Being active is important, but that's not quite the definition. Activism is any action designed to bring change in a society. It could be a small change in your neighborhood, a bigger change in your city or state, or even a change that affects the entire country or world.
Wow, that's powerful stuff. So if that's activism, what's an activist? An activist is anyone who feels passionately about something and works to learn more, raise awareness for others, and bring about change. Any one of you watching could be an activist. You might be wondering why we're talking about activism if this video is supposed to be about Martin Luther King Jr. Well, the answer is simple. Martin Luther King Jr. was an activist who worked tirelessly during the civil rights movement and hoped for a world where race would not impact a person's rights. Before we tell you more about what Martin Luther King Jr. did in our country and around the world, it's important to know where he came from. Martin Luther King Jr. was born on January 15, 1929 in Atlanta, Georgia. He was a gifted student and graduated high school when he was 15 years old. He attended Morehouse College and received his degree. He then went on to do 3 years of study in Pennsylvania to become a pastor. He was really influenced by his father, who was also a pastor. During this time, he met and married Coretta Scott. After receiving an advanced degree to be called the Reverend Dr. King, together they moved to Montgomery, Alabama to become a pastor. And that's when things get interesting.
Civil rights are guarantees of equal opportunities and protection under the law no matter who you are. During the 1950s and 60s, those laws were different based on the color of your skin. For example, there were different restaurants, bathrooms, schools, even different drinking fountains based on the color of your skin. Imagine someone telling you it was against the law for them to drink out of your fountain.
Sounds crazy, doesn't it? That's why the civil rights movement was organized to fight for the equality and rights of all people.
So let's get back to Dr. King. Soon after he and Coretta moved to Montgomery, Alabama, Rosa Parks, a name that may sound very familiar, was arrested. Why, you ask? For not giving up her seat to a white person on the bus. These are the kind of problems we were talking about at the time. A white person could ask any person of color to give up their seat, and when Rosa Parks refused to do so, she was arrested.
Dr. King became involved in the civil rights movement when he became the leader of the bus boycott. He used the basement of his church to host meetings with the community and planned and organized how to boycott the buses. Black people refused to ride the buses in Alabama until this unfair law was changed.
During the bus boycott, bus company lost 30,000 to 40,000 tickets each day from people of color not riding the bus. The bus boycott was a success for several reasons. First, the city agreed that no one had to give up their seat based on the color of their skin. The second success was making a big change without using any violence. Just like Dr. King had hoped, the boycott was a peaceful way to protest or argue against a law they wanted to be changed.
The idea of a peaceful protest is a form of civil disobedience. This concept was first introduced to Dr. King by Mordecai Johnson. King was inspired after hearing Johnson speak in Philadelphia. Johnson spoke highly of another civil rights leader from India, Mahatma Gandhi. Gandhi, a lawyer, led social change in India through nonviolent and peaceful protests, which is now known as civil disobedience. King was so moved by the way Johnson spoke, Gandhi became a huge influence on the way he led the civil rights movement in America.
Another example of civil disobedience during the civil rights movement was a sit-in, one of the most famous being the Greensboro sit-ins. The sit-ins began at the Woolsworth lunch counter on February 1st, 1960, when 4 colored students sat at the whites-only counter refusing to leave until they were served. In the days that followed, hundreds of people joined their cause sitting peacefully at counters. After protesters were arrested, the sit-ins became a boycott until those 4 students were finally served.
Organized protest marches have become some of the most visible and memorable acts of civil disobedience. King's belief was that no matter what violence the protesters encountered along the way, their goal remained the same. The only way to achieve change is through peaceful protests.
In 1963, he worked with over 250,000 people to attend the March on Washington to peacefully protest for civil and economic rights for Black Americans.
During this march is where he gave his famous I Have a Dream speech, where he talked about peace and equality and what he dreamt for the United States. This speech, along with many others, was inspired by one of his greatest mentors, Benjamin Mays. Mays was the president of the Morehouse College when King attended. Dr. King regarded Mays as an intellectual teacher and a spiritual father. Before March on Washington, Mays gave a prayer.
Dream. My poor little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
Later in 1964, partly due to the success of the March on Washington, President Johnson signed a landmark Civil Rights Act, which was meant to eliminate legalized racial segregation in the United States. Despite these gains, Black Americans still experience prejudice in their daily lives.
Martin Luther King Jr. speeches are some of the most important writings in the English language. His work has taught people of all races and cultures and are studied by teachers and students all over the world.
Because of his leadership, the Civil Rights Movement opened doors to new education and employment opportunities that never existed for African Americans in the United States.
In 1983, President Ronald Reagan signed a bill making the third Monday of January Martin Luther King Jr. Day. He is the only non-president to have a national holiday dedicated to celebrating his life and work.
The work and words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. created an atmosphere of change which inspired many others to become activists themselves. One of those activists was his wife, Coretta Scott King.
Coretta Scott King may be known as Martin Luther King Jr.'s wife and mother of their 4 children, but she also played an important role in the Civil Rights Movement. She spoke at churches, colleges, to peace groups, and being a trained musician and singer, even performed at freedom concerts.
After Dr. King's death in 1968, Coretta Scott King made sure his work continued. She spoke around the world for not only racial, but economic justice, women's rights, children's rights, and the rights of anyone no matter who they are.
Many others have worked to carry on the legacy of Dr. King. At Sierra Canyon, we not only strive to live that legacy, but we live it every day.
At Sierra Canyon, we embody the idea of learning forward. It's the idea of taking not only what we learned, but who we are forward into a brighter future, the kind of future Dr. King envisioned for everyone.
Be a bush if you can't be a tree. If you can't be a highway, just be a trail. If you can't be a sun, be a star. For it isn't by size that you win or fail. Be the best of whatever you are. At Sierra Canyon, we are consistently told that it is our effort that is more important than the results. We must learn to be the best we can be and give our best effort, not focus on being the best. It may take us longer, and we may have to take small steps instead of big ones, but we can always try our hardest to do our personal best. Our teachers model this by showing us that mistakes are part of learning. When we don't do well, we are reminded that this is a snapshot of a moment, not a reflection of who we are.
Life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? Community and family are important parts of who we are at Sierra Canyon. When we give or do something for others, even small acts of kindness, we often forget the joy we feel in our own hearts. Learning to put others first at Sierra Canyon ensures that we bring this practice forward into the future.
The beauty of genuine brotherhood and peace is more precious than diamonds or silver or gold. On the playground, field, or on the court, we are consistently reminded that feeling good and having fun are more important than winning a game or a prize. In life, we are often motivated by what we can get and forget to focus on the experiences and people we are with. In English class this year, we read The Gift of the Magi, a story of 2 people who care for each other enough to sacrifice something of themselves for the other person. It is a lesson in making the person more important than the gift.
The time is always right to do what is right. I'm sure all of you right now are thinking of Mr. Horowitz and what he tells us at the end of every assembly when he passes us on the yard or when he's hunting for the ooh-ah bird. Say it with me, always do the right thing even when no one is looking.
But let's think about what this actually means. It's not just about helping someone when they fall or picking up trash that isn't yours, your own, or sitting with someone who looks lonely. It's about choosing to do the right thing even when that's the uncomfortable choice. Choosing what is right when your friends are not. Choosing what's right when you're angry or feeling hurt. Because choosing what is right will always leave you feeling good about yourself.
Forgiveness is not an occasional act. It is a permanent attitude. True forgiveness comes without holding a grudge. We can't move forward if we are constantly looking in the rearview mirror. The spirit of forgiveness leaves mistakes in the past. At Sierra Canyon, we will spend years with each other in the spirit of forgiveness, not just with our closest friends, but with our peers, allows us to peacefully coexist.
Even though we face difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. This relates to Sierra Canyon because even though school can have hardships like getting bad grades or having problems with friends, we should know that these problems can be resolved and not to give up. Learning to have a growth mindset makes any obstacle an opportunity to persevere.
Our problem is to not be rid of fear, but rather to harness and master it. Being brave doesn't mean that you're not scared. It just means you won't let fear stop you. At school, we are surrounded with opportunities to face our fears, whether it is in the classroom, in small groups at PE, or our after-school enrichment programs. We have safe spaces to trying something new and face our fears.
Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Our big 4 words are honesty, respect, kindness, and responsibility. This quote ties to all 4 of them. It's not just the idea that 2 wrongs don't make a right, but that we must treat people with respect and kindness, not hate. It also means we take responsibility for our words and actions. If someone angers or hurts us and we become the bigger person by leading with kindness, it may give that person time to reflect on themselves and de-escalate the situation. Leading with kindness is the kind of energy others will crave and perhaps influence others to be better people themselves.
As one student, it's hard to imagine how you can make a profound change. That's one of the biggest lessons we can learn from Dr. King. One person, one voice can make a huge change felt all over the world. A legacy is how we live on through the differences we make. What we have learned here at Sierra Canyon and from Dr. King is that we each have the power to make a world of difference.
If we look around us today, we'll see many changes that still need to take place. But we remember Dr. King and his dream. A dream is full of hope, and we hope that you're inspired to be an active part of change for good.
On behalf of Sierra Canyon, the class of 2031, we would like to say thank you, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.